on the line with us right now a man who is essentially a jack of all trades. He was the Speaker of the House for a long time, got a lot done there. He's a prolific author. He's also a, TV analyst, and he's just a very brilliant man. And he's got a new book out called Trump versus China. His name is Newt Gingrich. The book, again, Trump versus China, Facing America's Greatest Threat. Before we bring him in, let me just tell you, he's got some book signings tonight at Bookends Bookstore in Ridgewood, New Jersey, and tomorrow night at 7 o'clock in Huntington, New York, the Book Review, which is a great, great place. So tonight in Ridgewood, tomorrow night in Huntington, Book Review. Newt Gingrich, good morning to you, sir.
Well, listen, it's great to be with you, and of course I'm looking forward to seeing people getting pictures, signing books at both of those great bookstores. So delighted to be on with you, and I'm very excited about my new book, Trump versus China.
As you should be, and it is the issue du jour, at least it was last week, and it always is, really pops up. And compared, for example, the Democrats seem obsessed with Russia. A lot of people do as well. But China, yes, the biggest threat. Tell us the overview with their threat.
Look, first of all, we just got another example of it when they intervened in the last few days to get several $1 billion to Erdogan in Turkey to offset American economic pressure. They're involved in Venezuela. The Chinese communists are clearly competing with us to see who's going to lead the world, and they have a totalitarian dictatorship model. As you can see, you're watching them try to impose it in Hong Kong. And, of course, they imposed it on the National Basketball Association. I mean, it was amazing to have a foreign dictatorship dictate to an American team what they could and could not say. And all these owners who had been proudly defending their players' rights to dissent about the American flag and the American national anthem suddenly shut their mouths and kowtowed to China. And it tells you the reach and the power of the Chinese. I think they're the biggest challenge we've had since the British Empire in the 1770s, much bigger than the Soviet Union, much bigger than Nazi Germany. So that's why I wrote Trump versus China, because I wanted to outline for everyday Americans just how big a deal this is.
They seem to be very subtle. You talk about it in the book, Newt, especially when it comes to espionage, the Sun Tzu model, which is a very subtle model. But the first time you were on the show with Bernie and I a couple of months ago was when you were promoting your new podcast. And one of your very first ones was a China discussion. And you told Bernie and I about this 5G technology, which you seem to think is what the U.S. must employ to eventually get the better of China in the end, right?
Yeah, well, look, I think it's going to define who controls and dominates the Internet and the electronic world in the next 30 years. And frankly, I sadly tell you this, we are so mired down in bureaucratic infighting and lobbying by old companies that don't have any money and are afraid to go to new technologies that it has just really been very frustrating. Meanwhile, Huawei, which is the great Chinese company, they're behaving like American companies used to behave. They're aggressive, they're entrepreneurial, they're making customer deals all over the world, and we're sitting around sucking our thumbs doing nothing. And it is, I think, the biggest single strategic advantage the Chinese have gained so far, because these guys, they come in with great facial recognition technology, and they say to a local dictator, "Hi, how would you like to have our help controlling your people?" We'll be glad to put all this stuff out there. And they have one brand new thing they announced recently that can scan 10,000 people at a time in a soccer stadium or a football stadium and identify precisely who to go after. And that's what they're trying to do in Hong Kong. Wow. Identify, that's why they were wearing masks in Hong Kong, was to defeat the facial recognition technology of the Chinese. By the way, our podcast at Newt's World, we have 3 podcasts in a row right now on China, including an amazing interview with a gentleman who now teaches at Hunter College in New York, who was disappeared by the Chinese for months. And he talks about this technique they have where they just pick you up. They don't tell your family. They don't tell your lawyer. You're just gone. And he experienced this, and it's a very sobering podcast and very revealing.
Very revealing indeed. And, I mean, you could spend an hour, 2, 3 hours on China. Essentially, look, they fragrantly ship us a deadly fentanyl. illegal immigration. They have baby factories in California. They steal our intellectual property. They're militarizing the South China Seas. And President Xi just last week said regarding Hong Kong that he's willing to crush bones and bodies. My question to you, Newt Gingrich, whose new book is Trump versus China, is Taiwan. If they invade Taiwan, would we adhere to our treaty and defend Taiwan from the Chinese, the Red Chinese?
I think we would have to. I think it would actually lead the Congress to a virtual declaration of war. We've given our word. Hey, you have 20-some million people living independently in freedom, productive, hardworking, not offending anybody, except that their very existence as a free people offends the Chinese dictatorship. And so there's been a huge military buildup in the Taiwan Straits. I think they're not as likely to invade them as they are to find ways to harass them. They could set up a missile testing zone, for example, and no merchant ship would go in it. So you could do a variety of things to harass Taiwan short of war. But I think if they actually did overtly attack Taiwan, we would send equipment and send whatever is necessary to help them survive.
Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. The book is out, Trump versus China, Facing America's Greatest Threat. And again, he'll be at two stores where I sign books at. Bookends Bookstore, which is, of course, in Ridgewood, New Jersey, and Book Review tomorrow night in Huntington, New York. Now, one of the places that the G7 will not be held is Shanghai. Ain't going to happen. But President Trump did want to have it down at his resort in Doral, but he has reversed that decision a couple of days ago. It was a stupid decision in my estimation to begin with. It really was stupid. I mean, the guy makes his own issues sometimes. Thank you. But what are your thoughts on the whole, A, choosing that place in the first place, and then B, the reversal?
Well, look, this is an example where Trump just should have, he should have floated the idea to about 10 people. And when they got done laughing, he'd have figured out, well, that ain't going to work. The minute I came out, I went to a number of my friends in the White House and said, this is not going to work, period. And I think he was flooded with people saying to him, there's no way you can defend this. You can't explain it. And frankly, I was delighted that he caved, because it was one of those cases where the longer he hung on to it, the dumber it was going to get, and the more it was going to hurt him. But I think it happens occasionally with him. The downside of being a really disruptive, dramatic leader is every once in a while you're going to make a mistake like this. It's a little bit like being a quarterback who throws deep all the time.
Right.
You cannot throw 40 and 50-yard passes without occasionally being intercepted. On the other hand, if you're really good at throwing 40 and 50-yard passes, you score a lot more touchdowns than you get intercepted.
So you just equated President Trump, Newt Gingrich, to Brett Favre, Hall of Fame quarterback, but because he was risky, every now and then he made a mistake.
Yeah, in fact, he's a lot like Favre was, I remember, in the St. Louis game, where he had four interceptions. But on the other hand, what I'd like him to do is get some of the balance that Aaron Rodgers showed the other night.
Nice.
I'm a big Packers fan, and I thought that was the right size victory. Anytime it's 42-24 for your team, you kind of feel, hey, this. And I believe, by the way, Trump may win the presidency again in 20 by a Packer-sized margin.
Wow.
Yes, and to that point, to Sid's point and your point, that the president had made an unforced error, Bill O'Reilly actually made this observation, is that he's been the most persecuted president under such pressure from everywhere, unprecedented, and that it's going to force some errors like this. And to that point, again, on this impeachment farce that's going on right now that he's under, again, just having been exonerated in the Russia collusion hoax, I mean, the way they're going about it, behind the scenes, do you think they have the votes, or what's going on with the whole impeachment farce?
If Pelosi's prepared to commit suicide as a majority, she can force through the vote. When she forces through the vote, she is probably going to kill her own majority, because there are so many districts. A good example is Peterson, the congressman in northern Minnesota, who represents a district that voted for Trump by 30 points. I mean, if Peterson votes for impeachment, he might as well retire and not run for re-election. So if she wants to, she can coerce enough people. She can get it out of the House, but then it goes to the Senate. And in the Senate, and I wrote a newsletter the other day, which is available for free. And in the newsletter, I said, that she can't only not play chess or checkers, she can't even play tic-tac-toe. and what I meant by that was, you protect this so-called whistleblower, and then you suddenly realize, they're going to go to the Senate. Well, if they go to the Senate, guess what the Senate Republicans are going to do immediately? They're going to identify the whistleblower. So this goofy notion that somehow they can play a game in the House and there's no second act, it just really makes no sense at all.
Are you sure that China's America's greatest threat, not Adam Schiff?
No. Look, Adam Schiff will go down in history as one of the great destructive clowns to ever chair a committee.
Nice.
And the stuff he did the other week where he invented Trump's telephone call was so stupid.
It really
in terms
was.
of undermining his own credibility.
Yeah, the Godfather stuff.
Someday Schiff will get an honorary clown membership in the Clown Museum. Just relax, and they'll take care of him.
That is funny. Newt Gingrich, yes, the book is Trump versus China. It's listen, the man's brilliant. The book is thick, and it's full of good stuff. It's really an interesting read, and he's going to be, as Sid said, at Bookends tonight in Ridgewood tonight, and then tomorrow night in Huntington at the book review, both at 7 o'clock in the evening. Go see Newt Gingrich, get his book, and get it signed. He's brilliant.
Great talking to you guys.
You too, Newt. You're a great guest. Thank you so much, and continued success. You could also check out Newt, of course, pretty regularly on Fox News.